There we go. All right, so we are live. Hello. Welcome to this week's video where I'm going to be talking about something that I'm kind of surprised I haven't already spoken about more. Um, and that is the idea of what we lose when we go on the self-love path. Because I know that a lot of people talk a lot about what we gain when we take on a self-love path or when we take on an awakening path or an awareness path. And we're talking about all of the finding your authentic self and finding your authentic life, and you're going to find your authentic job, and you're going to find your authentic friends, and you're going to be able to leave all of these things behind that didn't serve you, and you're going to find this life that really works for who you are. And I think that there's a lot of talk about how you're going to get rid of your anxiety, and you're going to get rid of your depression, and you're going to get rid of your self-sabotaging behaviors, you're going to get rid of all of these bad habits, you're going to get rid of your lower self, and all of those things are really like a game. You see what I'm saying? Like the selling point is always like when you become your authentic self, when you go on your self-love path, when you're doing this right, you're making your life better, and everything is getting better, and everything is feeling better, and everything is awesome. And I think that we don't talk enough about the kind of real realities of what going on this path actually requires of you, and the fallout that happens. And the other thing that I really want to talk about is the coping, the numbing, the self-sabotaging, the scapegoats, the behaviors that we're trying to get rid of on our self-love path actually being something that tend to get worse as we actually start to embrace this path, as we try to become our real selves, and why that is. Okay, because for most people that I know, and for myself, the process of really discovering myself and discovering what is authentic for me, like to a degree that I'm living a life that's generally working for me. Because again, remember, we don't ever like fully understand ourselves. We don't ever fully arrive. We're always going to have things that we're learning and that we're growing into and that we're discovering about ourselves, and challenges and things like that. Like that's always going to exist. But we can get to a place where we kind of like, okay, like this is pretty much the general structure of who I am, and my life is gonna look kind of like this. You see what I'm saying? And getting to that place where we have a relative sense of inner peace about ourselves and about the path that we're on and about how we're going to live our lives, where we don't feel that constant gnawing like I'm doing it wrong or I'm missing my purpose, or that like just feeling like you're kind of constantly like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and then you fall off, and then this is what I'm doing, and then you fall off, and this is what I'm doing, and then you fall off. Like these loops of behavior that we seem to be in and then can't get out of. And that's what I'm talking about. Like when you can really actually kind of figure out some fundamental things so that those loops stop happening. Like you really do get to a new place. So you're not looping in your same self-destructive coping, having the same problem, thinking you're dealing with it differently. It comes back in a new, different way over and over and over again. You just do the new diet, you do the new relationship, you move, you leave the job, whatever, but you never actually solve the problem. We can get there. But what I want to talk about is that what actually has to happen in between, okay, I'm getting on the self-love path, I'm going to love myself, I'm going to create this life for myself, I'm going to figure out all the things, and actually living that life. And in the middle is going to be the whole explosion of all of your self-sabotaging behaviors, everything actually getting harder and scarier usually before it gets better. And like I say, the things that we lose on the way, that are usually the reason that people don't follow through with this path. Okay? Because the reality is that most people aren't ever going to really question their foundation. They're not ever going to really fundamentally shift their life to such a degree that you can say the problems you were dealing with 10 years ago, you're not dealing with today. You're not in your loops. You really have figured out a new way, and you haven't just resigned to it. Because I know that a lot of people do that, right? Like, we get on a spiritual path, we get on a self-love path, we're really hardcore, we're working on it, and then eventually we just kind of like, we just kind of give up and resign, and we're just kind of, well, this is just kind of who I am, and this is what life is going to be. Those are kind of the main options. Most people just stay struggling their whole lives, or they find some way of just coping and making peace with it to a degree. Okay, so what I'm talking about in the what we're going to lose, and the thing that I think that really stops people from going all the way with this book, from like, I am going to become like a completely different person than I was 10 years ago, because I've completely shifted my foundational concepts of myself and of reality so much that I've crafted a whole new different kind of life for myself that makes me very different from the consensus reality, even if I like work a regular job or have what on the surface might look like a regular life. Because again, remember this, that getting out of your conditioning, deprogramming yourself, finding your real authentic self doesn't mean you're going to end up being a hippie who lives in a yurt on your own property somewhere, and anything else means that you're still just like in the matrix. Okay, we have to remember that it's not about it looking some specific way on the surface. Okay, this path is about, again, like I said, you get to a place where you feel confident and centered and grounded in yourself and in your life path. And you feel like, okay, like this is who I am. And so even in the mess, and even in the I don't have it all figured out, and even in the scary moments and the challenges and all that stuff, you have a sense of like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. Whatever it is, it's going to be okay, because I'm on my own side. Like, I get how to comfort myself. I understand, generally speaking, what I need as a human being to feel regulated, and I'm here for me. And so again, it's not, this is what it looks like to be woke or to be on a spiritual path. Okay? And you will be less and less dependent on things and on people's opinions of you and on the world to tell you what's the right thing. And you'll just feel more empowered to learn from your experience and to follow whatever that thing inside of you wants. And when you run into conflict and you run into feeling shitty and you run into negative emotion and anxiety and depression and your body breaking down or any of these things, again, it's this new way of living where you're like, okay, what am I here to learn? What can I discover about myself and reality in this? What can I do with this so that it evolves me, rather than being a thing that's like, well, this is not what I expected to happen, so life is going wrong. You see? This is more what it is. When we're really living on our authentic paths, we're different humans. We act differently. We live differently from an internal place. Like, it's the view of life that's completely different. It's not oh, there it is. Okay. This is what I want to talk about today, which is, how do we move through the barrier, like the real actual barrier of, because the person we consciously thought we were supposed to become, the person we consciously believed we were going to turn into, isn't who we really are. And now we're going to lose the love, and we're going to lose the security, and we're going to lose the soul, like the life path. We're going to lose the direction we thought we had and that we thought we were on, because what we even thought was a self-love path, what we even thought was our true path, isn't. And we've already gone so far down the road. We've already invested in that way of life so much that to change course now feels like the craziest and most terrifying thing that you could possibly do. So the real understanding that we have to understand here is that this self-love path means embracing that you might not ever become this person you thought you were supposed to become. That you might not ever become the person you thought you were going to become if you just loved yourself enough, if you just fixed yourself enough. And understanding that sometimes letting go of the self-sabotage, letting go of the coping, letting go of the numbing is going to mean you can't work that job anymore. You can't be in that relationship anymore. You can't be this specific way in social situations. You have to let go of trying to become this thing you're never going to become. You have to just embrace what you actually are, which for some of us, right? So again, right, we talk so much about discovering your true self, and it's so amazing to discover who you really are and to discover what you really want and discover what's really true for you. And that's true on some level, but a lot of the time, the stuff we're going to discover about ourselves is more horrifying in the beginning than it is exciting. Like when we really get honest about who and what we are, we're going to come to like, oh shit, that means I'm never going to be good. I'm never going to be the thing that's going to get me love and approval from the outside the way that I thought I wanted and I needed it. That like the thing that's making me gamble, the thing that's making me addicted to Netflix, the thing that's making it so that I have to binge every night, or the thing that's making it so that I'm looping in the same relationship drama over and over and over again, is because I'm trying to live this life, even this spiritual life, even this woke life, that isn't actually who I am. And I'm going to have to, at some point, get to a place where I say, I'm willing to become the person that I actually am, even if it means I never get approved of by the outside. Like, I never get that. And I don't know that there's anything kind of scarier than that, than the revelation that who I actually am isn't who I thought I was going to be when I did this self-discovery life. Like, I really thought I was going to turn into this person. I was going to be an extrovert. I was finally going to be someone who could be successful in this certain career, or be successful in this certain way of life, or I was going to be this great thing that invents this great thing, or does this great work, or is a healer, or is a whatever. Like a lot of people that follow me, that thinking that if I get on the self-love path, I'm supposed to be some like enlightened guru, spiritual hippie who has perfect physical health and perfect emotional mastery and is doing something like really profoundly life-changing for other people. And the reality is, you might just recognize like, I don't actually really like doing that. I don't really want that. And I'm just a human who's going to have health issues, who's going to have, it's not some heaven. That when I really discover my real self, they're still just a normal kind of broken in places, confused at times human who's gonna be on a learning path for the rest of my life. There isn't this graduated perfection that's ever going to happen, right? So I'm going to speak from my own experience on this, right? On my self-love path, so much of what could have been the reason I got off the path and I stayed in my addictions and my problems that I have would have been recognizing that I was never going to be like marketable, popular, YouTube, Instagrammable, right? That like I genuinely believed for almost all of my life that at some point I was going to become like a social butterfly that was generally socially liked and like normal. Like I really did like think I was going to become someone who is socially normal. First thing. I really believed I was going to have like perfect physical health. And I was going to like figure all this stuff out, and then I was going to get to this place and I was going to be like physically perfect. That I was going to finally stop being someone who people dislike because I'm so intense, right? I really thought I was going to stop being so intense one day. I was going to just chill out. I was going to become like this chill, zen, can go with the flow, whatever person. And along my self-love path, I came to recognize that, oh, and like even just like more kind of like basic stuff. Like I just thought like I would be able to work a normal job and I would be able to like, yeah, like be social with my husband who's a super extrovert. I really thought that I was gonna become someone who stopped having needs was my big thing. Like I really thought I was gonna transcend being human at some point so that I could just be of service at all times. Like that was like the main thing. Like I really thought that if I just did this self-love path enough, if I just worked on myself enough, if I just healed myself enough, if I just got everything right, I was finally going to be able to like show up for anyone and anything that came into my path and be able to like support and heal and nourish and just like be the perfect loving support for anything and everything. And along this path, like I talk about the very first time I recognized and realized that I might never get the ideal body. That I might never stop being sick and stop having extra physical needs and all of the baggage that came with that, right? Because growing up, it wasn't safe for me to be sick, and I was sick all the time. So now, right, looking back and this year, especially discovering all of these diagnoses and things that are like challenging with my physical body, finding out that I have Asperger's syndrome, that I have the gene mutation, that I have histamine intolerance, that I have all of these problems that have been with me my entire life and are genetic to some degree, and that, right, I'm going to do the best that I can. I've already done a lot with them, but I might never be just someone who can live a normal life healthy and not have extra physical needs. And like the shame and the guilt and the absolute just like terror I have and had way more around that because of how much it got me rejected in my childhood, because of how much it gets me rejected even now, right? Like I know that there are people, it doesn't matter, but like, right, my reach is not as big as it could be because my physical body is not attractive. It's not normal. It doesn't fit into the bounds of what it's supposed to look like, and it freaks people out. and I know that, and it feels like it, and it used to be so much worse, that it used to feel that like that was the reason I was never going to reach my potential, that was the reason I was never going to be good enough, that was the reason I was never going to be worthy of love. And and the external world and everything told me that that was true. So coming to this revelation that like I might never achieve the thing that I think that I need to achieve before I will be lovable by society was heart-wrenching, right? But my continual just like trying to fix my body and just trying to heal my body, and just this fixation on like I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I hate myself. Every single time I'm sick, every single time I'm weak, every single time I'm puffy, every single time I'm bloated, every single time my digestion doesn't work, there was like just these constant loops of self-hate and self-improvement that I'm constantly on. I was constantly on, until I finally was like, I might never be this, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to love myself, right? And there was that feeling of like I might lose my husband, I might lose my friends, I might, and just that bigger sense of like I'm gonna lose consensus reality, love, and approval, because I'm never going to become the ideal thing that you're supposed to become. And rather than saying like, no, I'm going to keep fighting for it. Like, I'm going to keep fighting for it. I'm going to keep fighting for perfect health. I'm going to keep going on the diet. I'm going to keep doing the things. I'm going to keep fighting that, like, no, one day I'm going to get this perfect. And it's going to be perfect, and it's going to be right, and then I'm going to be good enough. I had to say, if I really love myself, I might have to just admit that this is me right now. And it might not ever change. Like, again, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to do the things. I'm going to discover things. It's not, I just abandoned my health now. But it was, I'm no longer going to withhold doing things that I know are authentic to me because I'm not healed enough yet. Right? I'm not going to hold myself back from putting myself out there on the internet. I'm not going to hold myself back from becoming a life coach. I'm not going to hold myself back from this or that. And like I said, I'm going to stop focusing on trying to become this perfect health individual that I might never become. So the same thing applies with the extroversion and the becoming someone who's not so intense and can be more socially graceful. I came to a point where I was just like, this might just be who I am. And there are going to be people who don't like me, who don't like who I am. And I'm never going to become Miss Congeniality. And that means that there will forever be people who think that the way that I talk is too intense, or the way that I present myself is too intense. And then at the same time, I'm never going to become the social butterfly I thought I was going to become. I'm never going to be one that can go to parties and have all these friends and do all this stuff, because it's too overwhelming. And like I say, now I realize I have autism, so like, okay, right? And but this constantly, I was trying to improve myself to become this person. I was trying to, and then especially I'm going to become the perfect healer, caregiver, support. So I constantly overtook responsibility for other people. I constantly took on more work than I could handle. I constantly burnt myself out over and over and over again. Like, this was one of my crazy eights of just like constantly taking on way too much, needing to cope or self-sabotage in some way, and then when I finally like got strong enough that I like let go of my coping, I would just crash. Like, I would have these crashes, like these constant, like debilitating crashes, where I'm like emotionally destroyed and completely overwhelmed and barely able to keep my life together. because I so overdid it. And just doing that over and over and over and over again until finally having to admit I was never going to be able to do what I thought I had to do. I was never going to become that perfect caretaker. I was never going to become the perfect anything. I was going to have limits. I'm always going to have limits. I am going to have social limits. I'm going to have limits of who and where I'm useful for other people. I'm not going to change the world. And embracing that. And realizing, like, right, I'm not going to become this great human being that I thought that I had to become. And that I thought that I would become if I just loved myself enough. And if I just did my spiritual journey enough. I would become this perfect person that the outside world would approve of. So several layers for me, right? Like the layer of I'm going to have perfect health and I'm going to change my social way of being and all these things so that the version of me that my caregivers would have liked and the other adults in my growing up life would have approved of would exist finally. And then also this who modern society would approve of. Right? If you're going to be a spiritual teacher, you better be perfect, like absolutely perfect, and you better never say no, and you better always have the answer, and you better never admit, like, this is beyond the scope of my expertise. I'll just channel in an alien, or I'll just do whatever. All of the things that right now would make someone like a popular spiritual teacher. I'm not most of those things. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm most of those things. And therefore, I'm not going to get that love and approval and acceptance. So again, over and over again, we're realizing that, like, what I'm trying to get across here is that it is normal that if on this self-love path, you kind of discover who and what you are, and then you get disappointed that that's who and what you are, like that's what's really there, and then you get petrified that if you were to embrace that and to actually do that, it is going to mean you never become the person you thought you were supposed to become that would get you that external love. And that you're going to have to learn to love the person you actually are. The just very human version of you. Because again, yes, you're going to discover your skills. You're going to discover your light worker stuff. You're going to discover your talents. You're going to discover those things you're naturally inclined towards. You're going to discover your real friends. You're going to have all that stuff, yes. But you're also going to discover just your humanity. Like the things about you that are just normal and average and not special and mundane and not what you wanted them to be. Like this is the thing. Like we're all going to recognize that we're more average and kind of just human than we want to admit. And like I say, for some people, this means like, oh my God, like I'm never going to want to be in this career that I'm in. Like if I really admit to myself, why am I doing my coping behaviors? It's because I hate my job. It's because this is not the right relationship for me. It's because this is not the kind of life I want to be living. And I don't know what kind of life I want to be living. I don't know what I want to do instead. For some of us, it's going to be like, yeah, trying so hard to be this person that I just am not. And trying so hard to not be this person that I absolutely just am. So, like, discovering that you are not ever going to, like I say, be someone who has a million friends. You're not going to be a social butterfly. You're an introvert. You like keeping to yourself. You don't like parties, all these things. And your caregivers wanted you to be a social butterfly. You're realizing that you're like the introspective artist type, and your caregivers wanted you to be an athlete. You're realizing that you want to have very little things and travel the world and not be tied down and not have children, and the world is telling you, well, that's irresponsible. You're not an adult. You're not being a real, that like, people just not getting it. And I think that is another big thing, right? When we really start to embrace who and what we actually are, there's going to be a lot of people in your life that just don't get it. Like, you're super excited, you're super on board, you feel like, yes, I just discovered this thing about myself, yes, this is my true self, da da da, and everyone around is like, okay. And just like, no one really cares. It's not like the whole world celebrates you. And so, like I say, it's like this letdown. So, like, well, there's the two sides of the coin, right? It's either the letdown of like, man, okay, I'm just way more average, or my life is going to be more of just like a journey than I thought it was going to be. It's not going to be this magical thing that is just like, this is just who I am right now. I have these physical health problems. I have these kind of like mental, emotional traumas. I have this job. I have these relationships, and the self-love path is just going to be kind of chipping away at finding authenticity, one little step at a time, because that's the other big thing, right? So much of this self-love path that's disappointing, that we lose, is that promise of the big dramatic before and after, right? I know so many people who were like, I was trying to do my self-love path, so I quit my job, I left my relationship, I moved to some tropical country, I tried to love myself, I couldn't figure out what I really wanted or what I really needed, and I ended up back where I started. Yeah. Because for most of us, the real self-love path isn't going to be this giant life overhaul moment like ayahuasca trip. It's going to be little tiny things we do. Like, okay, it's more authentic for me to like be a little bit more honest in my communication with my partner. I'm going to move towards starting a side business to see if I like it. And then over time building that up, and if that becomes a career that I like, and it's going to change and shift 100 million times before it becomes something financially stable that I would want to leave my job for. And maybe you don't. That's the other thing. There are so many, it's so very possible that you won't leave the career you're in, that you won't leave the relationship you're in, that finding your real self, and even if you're totally miserable in what you're doing, you're going to realize that it wasn't necessarily the life that was making you so miserable, but it was the you were expecting you to be in that life that was making you miserable. All the different stories of what you should and shouldn't be doing, and who you should and shouldn't be, and how you had to live. Like, maybe it's not the relationship that's terrible, but there's codependency in the relationship, so you got to work on that. Maybe it's not necessarily the job that's terrible, but like how you're showing up at the job. So, and maybe it's not that get out of society, but maybe it's get out of thinking you need to have so much money and so much time and so much whatever so that you can keep up with all the stuff. Like, maybe you just want to live and have your normal job that makes enough money to pay for your apartment, and then the rest of your time you can just have your hobbies. And that simple life is what you want. That there isn't greatness by society's standards. Yeah, that if I'm not doing normal life, I better have something great to replace it. I think that's another huge thing that keeps people from actually discovering their true selves. That it's like, if I'm going to question the status quo at all, I better have something miraculous in its place. Otherwise, society's going to judge me of like, why did you take the risk to be different if it wasn't so that you could become amazing? And it's like, most of us aren't going to become amazing. We're just going to be a little bit better. than average. And that's going to be good enough. Like, that's going to feel good enough. And we're just going to live a life that's, we can't say to other people, like, look, it was totally worth it because I went from living this horrible job with these horrible relationships and all this stuff to perfect health and this blissful relationship and this job that's my calling and blah, blah, blah. Like, that might happen. Or you might say, I sort of adjusted my work and I kind of adjusted my relationships, and over a 10-year period of time, I've made lots of little changes to my life, and now I'm just way more at peace and centered in myself. And the external isn't so radically different, but the internal is totally different. And so the way that I move with the external is totally different. The way that I'm interacting with the external is totally different, right? And so this is the thing that I really want to offer, is that you're not here to prove that the self-love path turns you into something that society would be like, okay, it was worth it for you to take the risk and be different. Because you became something like amazing. You're the next Tony Robbins. That's not the requirement. Like, I've heard people say, like, what's the point of being vegan if you still get sick? Well, right? No. Just humanity is really afraid of better. We want perfect or we're not interested. And the self-love path means that you give up on perfect. You give up on this next step is going to take me from hell to heaven. That living my right life means I'm in complete bliss all the time. That I always have all the answers. And again, that I've become this person that might even just be programming of who I'm supposed to become, so that I will be accepted and loved by everyone else. The reckoning is always going to come when you realize you might not ever get that external love. That who you actually are and what you actually want is either radically different than what you thought you were supposed to become, or is just not this big, amazing before and after story. And it's just you being an authentic human. And that authentic human is a human. You have greatness, you have things that are your strengths, you have things that you're excited about, and you have weaknesses, and you have things that you're never going to be strong in, and you have stuff that's just going to be a challenge for a while, and you're always going to have stuff that you're working out, right? I'm on a self-love path. I have radically changed my life, and I'm not perfect. Right? Again, I have health issues that might never go away. I might never become the ultimate YouTuber, whatever. And that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm not doing it. That doesn't mean I'm not doing it right. That means I'm a human who was born with some stuff. Right? I still get overwhelmed emotionally and then yell at my husband. I'm not perfect. And that doesn't mean I'm not doing it right. And then, like I say, the big shifts that took place with me were making peace with the fact that I'm not going to be the social butterfly who can be the perfect spiritual guru and all of these things, so that I could design a life for myself that actually works for the kind of person that I am. And I want you to understand that that was really scary and hard for a lot of years. That constantly realizing I was still trying to become someone that I'm not, and then the act of actually admitting, this is what I'm actually capable of. This is what I can actually sustain. This is the way that I feel in relationships, right? Like, actually eventually coming to my husband and being like, yeah, I'm never going to get there. where we can go to parties together and have this social life that I've been sort of promising you that one day I'm going to become that. Like literally having that reckoning conversation with him and being like, hey, I've essentially been lying to you. I didn't know I was lying to you. It was my conditioning that I kept saying, no, like we're going to get there. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And I was so afraid that I was going to lose him because of that. And instead, now we're working on like, okay, well, if this is the reality, right? Because like then he's holding himself back, waiting for me to become this different person, for him to start pursuing the relationships and the kind of social life he wants. Because I keep telling him, I'm going to get there one day and we'll do it together. And so when I finally just said, okay, I'm never going to get there. I'm not going to do it. You're going to have to just go and build that life on your own. We were both freed to just admit who we actually are. Because like, right, he needed to also admit that he needed way more social stuff than what we had. And continually waiting for me to make it happen, he was always going to be disappointed and unfulfilled. And so coming into the truth was disappointing, but it freed us both. So like this, and like I say, coming into the truth of what I'm actually capable of with my job. In some ways it was very disappointing. I had to let go of, I'm going to be on Oprah and I'm going to have this massive following and I'm probably not. And what I'm capable of producing and what I'm capable of doing and how I'm capable of showing up, I had to admit all those things. And it was scary and it was hard and it was like losing this hope for this person that I was going to become. But on the other side of that, like I said, it meant that I could create a job that actually does work for me. And then I had to do the hard and scary work of learning to love the person that I actually am. That has the limits that I have. That has the incapacities that I have. That has the immaturities that I have. That has the I'm not perfect and the things that other people are never going to appreciate about me. Right? I'm never going to become the thing that the external world would approve of in a lot of areas of my life. And I had to learn how to love these parts of me, even though like it was pretty much consciously admitting that I'm never going to get that external love because I'm never going to become the person I thought I needed to become, and the person the world wanted me to become before they would love me. And then how am I going to pursue what I want to do and stop waiting around for myself to become this perfect person before I give myself permission to do what I really want to do. And so, like I say, for a lot of us, the coping and the numbing and the self-sabotaging stuff keeps coming up because we don't want to actually look at who we really are. We want to keep holding on to hope that one day we're going to get good at this. One day we're going to become this person who doesn't need to cope and numb and scapegoat, right? Like when we really deeply ask ourselves, like, why am I doing this? It's like, because I hate this, because I don't like this, because this isn't who I really am. And then that fear that comes up with that like, well, if that's not who I am, and if that's not what I like, and if that's not it, like, oh my God, I've been working my whole life for this, then I don't know who I am, then I don't know what I want, and then I'm not going to be approved of. I'm not going to get the love that I've been working for my whole life. Like, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I thought it would lead to me eventually having that love and that security and that safety that I feel like I'm missing. And coming into the revelation that, like, it doesn't exist out there. Like, especially the security that we're all going for. That, like, I'm finally going to become this thing, I'm going to achieve this thing, and then I will feel secure. And it's like, no, you won't. because life is always going to be a curveball. Life is always going to bring you something new. You're never going to become or achieve anything that leads to perfect security. And I think that is another major thing we're so afraid to admit to ourselves. That on the self-love path, you just get to a place where you say, life is always going to be a little bit chaos. I'm not always going to be loved. I'm not always going to be understood. I'm never going to get to a place where I'm guaranteed to always have an income in this very specific way. I'm guaranteed that I'm never going to run into a problem I don't know how to solve. I have that perfect health that's never going anywhere. We got to recognize that, no. The self-love path means I'm admitting the general things that I'm actually capable of, that I actually want, and building that life, being willing to lose the people I'm going to lose, being willing to lose the love and approval I'm never going to get, that I was faking, that I was promising that was never going to be. Maybe I quit the job, maybe I quit the career, maybe I leave the relationship, maybe those big things happen, or the little things. Maybe you just start communicating differently, you start working on the relationship differently, you stop waiting for this perfect after vision that's supposed to come to show you who you're supposed to become, and you just get in the life of one step at a time. I don't have this grand big vision, but I know I have one next step I can take. One better, right? We let go of perfection and we start embracing just better, just one step better. Just what's my next step forward? It's never going to be heaven. Maybe my next step is leave the job. Maybe my next step is just, like I say, change the way I do it a little bit. Maybe the next step is leave the relationship, or we get some couples counseling because we need to work on our communication. There isn't going to be an answer. I don't know how to solve all my health problems, but if I get on my own side and just feel into my body, I can feel that I just want to stop pushing myself to work out for 3 hours a day. Or like there's this one little step I can take. And then over time, little by little, increment by increment, we just listen to our intuition a little bit. Listen to that guiding voice a little bit. Make little changes. And over 10 years, our whole life is different. And like I say, and then we embrace that we're just humans. And the reality of who we are is maybe not ever going to be this big, special, you proved it thing. That you're just this person. And fully embracing and indulging whatever it is that we are in this moment without then getting attached to it. Because that's the other side. It's that sometimes, especially with our trauma and all these things, we need to let ourselves do something that we are just like so drawn towards for a period of time to like show ourselves that we can give it to ourselves. And then we might say, okay, that was fun and now I'm over it. You get really into something for a little while and then that's it. Right? You get really into Japanese calligraphy for like a year and then you never look at it again. And then you get really into painting and then you never do it again. And you're just on your path. So what we lose on the self-love path is that promise that we're going to become that perfect person that we've been indoctrinated our whole lives we have to become before we're going to be lovable, and that we're going to lose the idea of heaven, of I'm going to become this perfect person one day, and then all things are perfect from then on. And we start to embrace who we really are, which means maybe doing some radical changes to life, or we embrace where we're at and we say, okay, one step. Just one step. How can I support who and what I am with all my trauma and all my stuff and all just right here, right now? There isn't a heaven. There isn't a perfect. I'm not going to become and then be this thing just forever and ever. I'm going to be on a journey of one step forward, one more discovery, figuring it out. Security comes from being in my moment and figuring it out in the moment. Not from knowing and having it all perfectly set and secure. Real security comes from I can figure it out. I can be with me. I know how to figure out the next step. The one step better. That's real security. The other stuff is a fantasy. I have it all figured out. I've reached this perfect pinnacle and then nothing changes. That doesn't exist. And then I've become the perfect person that everybody loves or that my caregivers wanted me to be and all these things. And I've self-improved and self-loved my way into being this perfect person. Not going to happen. The life I want is either radically different than the one that I have, and oh my God, that means I'm admitting I'm never going to be what everyone wants me to be. Or the right life for me is one step at a time. Just one little step at a time. How can I improve the relationship? How can I improve the way that I interact with my work? How can I be more authentic just incrementally in all the things that exist in my life right now? It's not a radical overhaul. Is it just embracing, okay, what would I actually want to say right now? And then starting to say it. What am I actually capable of handling right now? And starting to say no where you can. We just make these little changes. Step by step by step. And admitting who we really are. Little by little by little. And risking the fallout of that. And like I say, losing that vision that we're ever going to become this perfect transcended being that everyone loves, that has no more problems. Okay? So that's really what it is. So if you're feeling like you're getting caught in your self-sabotage and your coping and your numbing behaviors on your self-love path, it could be because you're afraid to admit who you really are. That you're discovering things that aren't profound and magical and whatever. Like, right, it could be you're discovering, like, I'm never going to be able to do this career path, this relationship, whatever, this life, and I actually do need a radical change. And that usually will come step by step by step by step by step. And admitting that to yourself and learning to love yourself, even though the world's not going to understand you or support you, because I can say that for myself, right? Like, I have radically changed my entire way of life, and I was antagonized the entire way. I had to learn to love myself on the step-by-step radical change path because people didn't understand what I was doing. And I failed a lot. And I made a lot of mistakes. And it didn't work out perfect most of the time. And people were like, why would you do this? Right? And I had to keep following it even though it looked totally bonkers to everyone else. And I didn't know that I would ever get there, and learning to approve of myself anyways. That was a big thing. And then, like I say, the other things of admitting who you really are and what you really want and what you're really capable of. And then being honest about that and starting to build that life, and then what you're going to lose as people discover who you really are and are disappointed and don't want to have anything to do with that. That's going to happen. And learning to love your normal stuff, your basic stuff, your human self stuff. That you're not transcended. You're just a human and this is how you are, and some people don't like that. And then letting go of this idea of perfect security when you have it all figured out. And saying, no, security comes from I'm going to be with myself and I can figure this out one step at a time. What's the next step in my relationship? What's the next step in my job? What's the next step in my health? What's the next step in my whatever? And just do the next step. Okay? So that's kind of realities. The losing of the idea that we're going to become this perfect thing and have this perfect life, and embracing this step by step what we really are. Okay? So I just wanted to put that out there. So if that's how you're feeling, you're not doing anything wrong. That's how it looks, and it's horrifying and scary, and you're not alone. And you can love yourself, even if you're not the special, shiny, whatever, that everyone expected you to be. And you can embrace what you are right now with all of your humanness and be on the path. You're doing it right. You're doing it right. It's just one step at a time. One little embracing of who you are, even if no one else understands or cares, at a time. Okay? So that's that. I love you. I will see you next